So good evening and welcome everyone for this today's session of Saturday Talk. We are very much honored to have Dr. Seshadri Chari, our own, who is associated with JanyuTech since beginning, is our mentor advisor, and he is going to speak today about India-China relations current status. Dr. Chari, as we are known and we are shared in his biodata, he is a politician, author, strategist, and a foreign policy analyst. He is currently a Secretary General on Forum for Integrated National Security, that is FINS, and is a member of Governing Council of Research and Information Systems, that is RIS. Apart from that, he is also associated with prestigious academic institutes in India like Manipal Institute, Mahe, Academy of Higher Education, where he is associated with the Department of India-China Study. He is a defense chair with the Pune University, as well as he is also associated with the Goa University. And the topic what he has chosen today, he has done is a specialization doctorate, PhD in the same subject. So, sir, we are very much eager to hear from you about the current status of this India-China relationship. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Rajesh ji, and a big namaste to all those people who have joined right now. Actually, as far as India-China is concerned, it's quite a test for me because the subject is so vast and so wide for 3-4 reasons. Number one, India and China have a very long relationship. These two countries, India and China, are two very ancient civilizations. India's civilization, of course, goes back to so many years. We don't know Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Indus Valley civilization, and even before that, so many things have happened. So our civilization dates back to so many years, so many centuries, so many eons, or in purely Indian terms, if you call Yuga. Similarly, the Chinese also believe that it's a very old civilization. There are very few civilizations in the world which are as old as, if not as old as India and China, but they are much older. Iranian civilization, the Persian civilization as we call it, the present day Iran is the remnant of what we call the Persepolis Empire, the Persian Empire. So that is also very ancient and very old. The Jewish society, Israel, believes that their civilization is also very old as the Christianity. And if Christianity has to go, we go back to Christianity, then that civilization also is very old, ancient, right from the beginning of the universe. Whether the religious belief apart, it goes to the days of Adam. So that is why there is an English phrase which says, I know him from Adams, which means I know him for a long time. So that is as far back as Adams they go. So these are all civilizations. There are hardly about Mayan civilization, for example, in what is today's Mexico, is called a Mayan civilization, which is very ancient. Then pagan civilization. So these are all civilizations. But what is important is the continuity of civilization. Except probably India, no other country in the world can talk in terms of continuity of civilization. And China also talks of ancient civilization, but they use the word civilization only for economic and strategic purposes. For example, the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, or what was formerly called the OBOR, One Belt, One Road Initiative, was supposed to be the regeneration of the ancient Silk Road. So they used to say that in ancient times, China had Silk Road and Chinese trade extended to all over the world. So they converted that into a modern terminology called Belt and Road Initiative. So if you look at all these factors, China can talk in terms of very ancient civilization. So our relationship, India-China relationship, goes back to those civilization period. So if you go back, if you don't go as far back as the ancient or what we call the prehistory civilization, even in the modern times, there is a medieval period in which there was a lot of interaction between India and China. So the most important interaction between India and China was the Chinese visitors, Chinese scholars who came to India, and then they explored India and have written extensively as far as India's civilizational aspect is concerned. That is one point. Another thing is what we call Buddhism. So Buddhism also, we can say, has contributed immensely as far as India-China relationship is concerned. So Indian Buddhist monks first visited different areas, what we call the land route. There are also references to Buddhists traveling to China by the sea route. And there are also references to the Tamil kings, especially the Chola kingdom, having extended military aid to China in the medieval period. So we know about Mamallapuram in Tamil Nadu, Chennai, near Chennai, and that is one place from where the Chola kings had gone to China to assist China militarily against their fight against the Mongols. So you can imagine the kind of relationship that India and China has had. And if you notice one thing, this relationship has been from a position of strength as far as India is concerned, militarily and spiritually, religiously, culturally, socially, from all these aspects. Now, there is a drastic change as far as this relationship is concerned. From what was cultural relationship, what was religious relationship, what was spiritual relationship, what was historic relationship, what was relationship between friends, has now turned into some sort of a relationship between adversaries. But what we have to see more importantly is 3 or 4 things. One, China's strategic rise in the international system and its implication for India and the new developments that are taking place. Second is how China's growing influence, sphere of influence, is impacting India. And third is what is India's preparation and what is China's preparation. So after the First World War, what happened? All countries went into war, so many countries went into war and all that. India also participated in the First World War. And then those countries decided that we cannot keep on fighting like this, so we have to come together and form, not fight. We should stop wars. War is not a solution to anything. So what they did, they put together what we call the League of Nations. Now, could the League of Nations prevent a war? No. After the League of Nations, there was another war, that is the Second World War. So League of Nations failed. So League of Nations is what? League of Nations is a rule, a framework, what we call a framework for countries to talk to each other and resolve the issues. So in another term for this kind of an institution is a what we call a framework, an order, or what we call the world order. We must be as students and as practitioners of so many work that we all do, we must be hearing about this world order. So League of Nations was the first institutionalized world order system. World should function on the basis of certain rules and regulations. Now, who will frame these rules and regulations? One country cannot frame these rules and regulations. 10 countries will have to come together, 15, 20, 50, 100 countries will have to come together and frame rules and regulations and agree to abide by those rules and regulations. Rules and regulations very easy to form, but if members don't agree, what is the use? So that is called world order. Now, world order is not an institution. World order is not an organization. World order is not a structured body, but it is the sum total of whatever is happening in the world according to a rule book. So League of Nations was the first institution that tried to bring some order in the world, but it didn't happen. It failed. Second World War happened. After Second World War, what happened? Then people decided that, look, wars are always bad. After the nuclear attack on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the war practically came to an end. And India also participated in the Second World War. And then United Nations came into existence. On the debris of First World War and the damage that Second World War caused, United Nations came into existence. Now, United Nations from 1945 to 2022, we are in 2022. For such a long period, more or less, the United Nations has withstood so many problems. After the Second World War, a major Third World War did not happen. But there was a very major war in between, say from 1940s, late 40s to up to early 90s. That was called a Cold War. Now, when United Nations came into existence, what happened? All countries were divided into 2 blocks, rather 3 blocks. One was the pro-West, the Western bloc. Second was the Eastern bloc. So the Western bloc stood for capitalism, freedom, laissez-faire economy, individual rights, and democratic elections, and rule of law, freedom of judiciary. The Eastern bloc, although it is wrong to call it Eastern bloc, the non-Western bloc or the communist bloc, as people used to call it, was the other side of it. No democracy, state is supreme. Although Marx said that state will wither away, state did not wither away. State became very supreme. State became superimposed on society. Individual rights were surrendered to the state. State was more powerful than individual, and more or less it was a one-party rule. There were communist parties in all countries, but all these communist parties were presided over by the International Comintern, and Russia, or rather the proper word would be USSR, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, became the leader of that bloc. So there were two blocs, what we call bipolarity in geopolitics. So this bipolarity in geopolitics created a race for supremacy. Who is strong? You or me? America is strong or USSR is, Soviet Russia is strong? So the war between America and Soviet Union became a war for supremacy. Ultimately what happened? Soviet Union disintegrated. Union of Soviet Socialist Republic got totally dismantled. And what was originally Russia, the Russia of the Tsar in 1916-17, again became Russia of 1990s, say 1992. So it was a monumental happening. So now what happened? There were two powers, bipolar, one A, one B. B disintegrated. So what should have happened actually? What should have happened is A should have become the superpower. So the world should have become a unipolar world. But that's what people thought up to 1994-95. There were a number of articles saying now the world is now become unipolar. There is only one country, and henceforth the whole world order will be decided by one country, that is USA. That was the power of USA in 94-95. But it did not stick for a long time. As I told you, there were three factors. Besides the West and the East, there was another small group of which India was one of the founders, was called the NAM, N-A-M, Non-Aligned Movement. This non-aligned movement became a very big cluster of countries which was neither part of the West nor part of the East. This non-aligned movement had governments represented by democracy, military dictatorship, single party rule, religious party, military dictatorship, everything was there. So it was not one single idea that guided the non-aligned movement, but what guided the non-aligned movement was, we will take a call on support or not to support a particular country or a particular situation depending on the emergence of that situation. And more importantly, the most important element here is whether it suits our national interest or not. So foreign policy is nothing but taking care of one's own national interest in the international arena. So this happened to be the most important element in the world order. But more or less, all countries followed the world order. So we come to 1990s, when people were talking about America and Russia, another country gradually began to play an important role in world politics, and that country is China. So we have to look at the emergence of China from the point of view of the world order, which was developing on its own. So now what happened was China started slowly coming into the global arena. Not that China was not part of the global arena before, but China wanted to be part of the global arena on their own strength. It is not that China suddenly decided one day and it became a great country. No, they were they were calculating. They were working on how to place themselves in the committee of world. Now, China was not part of the United Nations. Now, as I told before, United Nations is the organization that decided the world order. So, if United Nations is the organization that decides the world order, every country which has to be part of the world order has to be part of United Nations. But surprisingly, India became part of the United Nations even before India became independent. That was the understanding, because ultimately they said a country like India has to be part, and then the British had already probably decided that someday or the other India has to become independent, and the colonialism was also slowly giving way to nation states. Therefore, they thought it is all better to make some of these countries which are part of the colonial system to become the member of United Nations, even though they are part of the British Empire. So India became a member of United Nations even before becoming independent, before 1947. So we have to remember that one thing in a very important aspect, we have to remember that. Now, as I said, the culmination of the Cold War actually coincided with the disintegration of Soviet Union and emergence of a unipolar world. But it was very short, limited to a very short time. And in that time, two factors became significant in determining the contours of, say, competition and cooperation in the last 3 decades, from 90 to 2000, and then from 2000 to 2022. In this period, what all happened, you see? One is rapid changes in the financial, banking, cyber security, demand and supply chain systems, and volume of trade, volume of bilateral trade, multilateral trade, and institutional trade. All these things happened from 1985-90 onwards. Every country was talking in terms of financial order. They were working their banking systems. People were worried about cyber security. Even in 95, 2000, up to 2000, when the internet revolution took place, people were worried about cyber security. And then because of the multipolarity, the demand and supply chain systems began to determine the volume of trade, whether it be bilateral trade, multilateral trade, institutional trade. All these things happened. International Monetary Fund became very powerful. World Bank became very powerful. And then another important factor happened at the same time. And that factor in this bipolar world was a new, what in geopolitical terms, what we call the new theaters of power contestation. Now, what is theater of power contestations, we should see. Now, Russia and China, USA contested for power. They both wanted to decide who is powerful. You are powerful or I am powerful. So all these areas, wherever Russia was strong, wherever USA was strong, the Western world and the non-Western world, as we call, became areas of contest, arena for contest between these two countries. Now, in that order, West was one, colonial powers were another set of countries where power was very important, where this war took place between Russia and USA. Europe was one place where this war took place. Today, when we see all these countries like Belarus, Poland, Ukraine, Armenia, Greek, and all these from Turkey upwards, northwest of Turkey and Iran, if you see, except the Middle East, or what we call the West Asia, all these countries, the Europe, what we call today the European Union, became part of the arena of the Cold War. Then Eurasia became the most important element as far as the Cold War is concerned. Today, then slowly what happened in the 1990s, after the 1990, from 1990 to say 2000, one new area developed as the most important area of power contestation. And that is called in terms of area, it is called Indo-Pacific region. Now, what is Indo-Pacific region? What was earlier called the Asia-Pacific. Asia and Pacific. Now, Asia-Pacific is the area which is determined by the confluence of two oceans, Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean. From 2015 onwards, the word Asia-Pacific changed to Indo-Pacific. So all the references to Indo-Pacific before 2014-2013, you will see they were all Asia-Pacific. And then it started as India-Pacific. Although the name changed, two very important things we should remember. When we say Asia-Pacific, the importance is for Asia. When we say Indo-Pacific, the importance is for Indo. So it is India-centric Indo-Pacific. Now, one country which has impacted the Indo-Pacific tremendously is China. And China is neither part of the Pacific Ocean nor part of the Indian Ocean. According to international theories, Eurasia and ocean, these two places become the most important element to determine the power structure of a country. How powerful you are, these two things important. You should be the powerful country in Eurasia, you should be the most powerful country in the ocean. So now how to become the most powerful country in the ocean? During the Cold War, Britain decided that Russia should not, Soviet Union should not become the most powerful country. Soviet Union was already very powerful in Eurasia, but Soviet Union was not powerful either in the Pacific Ocean or in the Indian Ocean. Okay, so the British wanted to keep the Soviet Union away from Indian Ocean. So what they did, they created partition of India in such a manner that they created Pakistan on two sides of India, on the eastern side and on the western side. And they dismantled the Ottoman Empire. So Turkey became very, not once upon a time very powerful, it lost its power. And then they controlled Iran. The Western world started controlling Iran. So how can Russia get into Indian Ocean? Either through Myanmar or through what is today called Bangladesh, that time it was East Pakistan, or through India, or through the British India, which was divided into India and Pakistan, or through Turkey or Iran. So the British controlled all these areas in such a manner that Russia will not be allowed to get into Indian Ocean at all. So Russia tried to get into Indian Ocean through Afghanistan, of all the places. But remember, Afghanistan is a landlocked country. So why I am going into all this detail is to bring a reference of both Indo-Pacific and the importance of partition. How partition was not only on the basis of Hindu-Muslim issue, partition was a strategy. Partition was mainly a strategy to safeguard Indian Ocean. Now remember, Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean have become what we call the IPR, Indo-Pacific region. So anyone who controls the Indo-Pacific region becomes the most powerful country. Soviet Union is unable to control the Indo-Pacific region. This is where the rise of China and the Belt and Road Initiative becomes very important. Now slowly what happens, if you keep on following the historic process, China introduced what is called the Belt and Road Initiative, and they extended all these Belt and Road Initiative to so many countries. It is what we call the flagship program of about $40 billion program. It was $40 billion program called the Belt and Road Initiative. Now this Belt and Road Initiative became the most important element as far as China's extension in the maritime domain, continental domain, and the world economy is concerned. So see, what has happened is they slowly branched out from being a very small country. Now they have become a very big nation, powerful nation, only through Belt and Road Initiative and all other such programs. So the only way to reach Indian Ocean. Now remember, why Indian Ocean? As I told before, the most important element in the power contestation is to hold what we call an important position in Eurasia and an important position in Indian Ocean. So the most important element as far as Indian Ocean was concerned was China wanted a foothold in Indian Ocean, and then they used China-Pakistan economic corridor to get into Gwadar. But now getting into Gwadar is the last part of it. How do you get into Gwadar? So then they started talking in terms of building a road. That is what is called China-Pakistan economic corridor. So they called it, they did not just call it a road, they called it economic corridor. And when they called it an economic corridor, that corridor has to begin from somewhere. So from where did it begin? It had to begin from an area which is in the north. So the area in the north, which is the area in the north, that is Tibet. That is why, as a plan to get a foothold in the ocean, instead of heartland theory, they called it rimland theory. So as part of the rimland theory operation, China extended its rule over Xinjiang and Tibet by militarizing and taking over Tibet and Xinjiang. What they did, China and India, remember, did not have a border at all in 1947. In 1947, there was no border between India and China. In 1947, the border was between India and Tibet. not China. We should always remember this fact very well. So when we talk in terms of border dispute and border talks with China, we should always remember someday we should tell the Chinese that look, we can have border talks with you, but that should be not a bilateral border talk, but a trilateral border talk. We will also involve Tibet, because Tibet is an important element as far as the border is concerned, because India has border only with Tibet. India does not have a border with China in 1947. In 1953, Dalai Lama had to leave Tibet. And in 1959, China took over Tibet completely. In 1962, they mounted an attack on India. In 1964, the first Prime Minister of India, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, passed away, died. But before he died, in 1963, remember 1962 and 1964, in between 1963, India instituted an organization to protect the border. What was that organization called? It was called ITBP, Indo-Tibet Border Police. In 1963, it was called Indo-Tibet Border Police. It was not called India-China Border Police. Even in 1963, India stood its ground very firmly and said that our border is not with China, but with Tibet. So we should understand what all these nuances. These are all very important as far as geopolitics is concerned. After they took over Tibet and Xinjiang, that was during the time of Mao. Mao was the person who sort of worked on these ideas. After Mao, the most important leader who ascended to throne, or rather who became very powerful, was President Deng Xiaoping. Now, Mao's situation was different, but Deng thought that we will have to slightly change our policy towards international affairs. So what he said, he gave 5 principles. One is we should watch the situation. And remember, he was talking at the time of Cold War. So they did not support the Cold War. They did neither supported USSR nor supported US. So the term that Deng used at that time was avoid leading or forming faction in any international conflict. Stay neutral. And the Chinese word for that, if translated, it says, don't stick your neck out. So that is number 1. Number 2, China will not lead any kind of opinion in international politics. Number 3, avoid any trouble, controversy, antagonism in world politics. And on smaller issues, just give up. And the 4th and the most important element was concentrate on economic and technology development. And the 5th was focus on creating friendly relationship with all the countries, irrespective of ideology. Mao was very important. Mao said ideology is very important. That is why the relationship between China and Russia split. Deng said, don't worry, whatever be the ideology of any country, be very friendly. Create more friends. Forget ideology. Literally, the terminology said, forget old party ideology. That is the word that he used. Now, if you look at China from this point of view, from Deng's point of view, you will see that China slowly implemented all these things. During the Second World War, during the Cold War, after the Cold War, China did not participate in any war. And the most important thing they did was improve upon their nuclear, industrial, and technology part of it. So that was the most important and striking feature as far as China's development is concerned. Another thing is what they call the conventional prompt global strike capability. US has this capacity. So what they did was China wanted to counter this. So if any country targets China's nuclear force or their command and control system with a conventional weapon, what should China do? What should be the response of China? They said our response will be immediate and as prompt as the US CPGS, that is Conventional Prompt Global Strike Mechanism. So you can imagine for China, India is not the enemy. They are not competing with India. They are competing with the US. Militarily, nuclear capability, economy, trade, and influence. Now, ideology has no place in all these things. What is important is to hell with ideology, but control is important. So in this kind of a situation, this is what we are faced with. So you can imagine when we are facing such a situation, how do we react? What should India do? India has got certain advantages and certain disadvantages. Now, We are a democracy, so it is easy for us to align with the Western world. We are one of the biggest markets, so all the countries in the world, including China, is interested in our market. We have got great production facilities, so India can be used as a production center for the whole world. Now, because of Corona pandemic and post-pandemic world order, which is changing, many countries don't trust China and they want to get away from China. Now, is there an opportunity where we can pitch in? That is the third factor that we should think of. As far as competition is concerned, if China is putting up some industry somewhere, we should be able to do it equally well. So if China is getting into African market, India should also get into African market. We are already late, but we should do that. And as far as confrontation is concerned, we have given them a great and very good answer in Doklam. We have prevented them from getting their objectives completed in Doklam. In Galwan also, we have given them a very bad face. So we are capable. Now we have to increase this military capability, and we have to also increase the capability of our deterrence. So if these things we will have to do, so there are certain things which have to do with external, certain internal things. If we do all these things, we will be able to compete with China as far as economic competition is concerned. We will be able to win if there is a conflict, and if there is need for cooperation, we can cooperate on the basis of autonomy. We can maintain the strategic autonomy, and at the same time we can compete with this kind of a situation. So this is overall the situation which we are facing as far as India-China relationship is concerned.
More of an observation than a question. We should not align with the Quad, is my observation. America is absolutely unfriendly when it comes to its policies. It has been supporting Pakistan for decades and has sabotaged many good projects in India to keep India down, because we were aligning with Russia. It has started doing the same thing. Now it has given F-16 bombers to Pakistan. Yesterday or day before, the American envoy was in Jammu, in Kashmir, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and he says this is Azad Kashmir. So Americans are untrustworthy. They are not the right allies to counter China.
Actually, one of the things that the Chinese tried to tell us, Indians, was the same thing. The Chinese kept on telling us that don't trust America. But as far as India's position is concerned, we have to do two things. One, India of 1947, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 is different from India of 2022. Now, this is the time when we can balance. We have been balancing. We are supporting Israel. We are dealing with Israel. We are buying arms and ammunition from Israel. We are doing trade with Israel. But at the same time, we have taken an independent stand as far as Palestine is concerned. We are able to deal with Saudi Arabia and Israel both at the same time. We are dealing with US and Iran both at the same time to our advantage. We are doing our projects in Chabahar, remember. We are dealing with so many other countries in the world which are at loggerheads with each other. We are not supporting the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but we are able to deal with Russia and also balance our relationship with the European Union at the same time. So and how best we can conduct this kind of a balance as far as foreign policy is concerned is what is more important. We should do that. As far as Quad is concerned, Quad was American idea, no doubt about it, but we have been talking about cooperation with Australia, we have been talking about cooperation with Japan, and we have held independent maritime programs with both Australia and Japan. We have got an independent maritime program with Singapore. We have got an independent maritime program with Indonesia. So we are doing it for a long time, irrespective of the Quad. When the Americans came in and they said we should have a common program as far as the oceans are concerned. So we agreed. So Quad has come into existence, and we have had a lot of meetings as far as the Quad is concerned, but Quad is not a structured organization. Whether it should become a structured, institutionalized organization or not, we are not commenting on it now. But we should be part of the Quad, but at the same time, as Deng said about China, don't stick your neck out. We should remember that we have categorically said that Quad is not a security architecture against China. So I think our involvement with Quad is very important. We should continue to be there with the Quad, but we should not work according to their ideology or objectives. That is what I would say.
You talked about China's growth in terms of two things. One is the economic growth and the other one is the technology growth. So how they supported each other? Because right now what we see end product, they have done very good in economy and also in technology. And is there anything for us to learn from that?
Yes, sir. That's a very good question, sir. Actually, every country, if you see in the history of say 100, 150 years or so, technology has been the most important element in the power projection of any country. The colonialism started with the Industrial Revolution. It was technology which gave that kind of power to United UK, the Great Britain. What was an ordinary country, Britain, became Great Britain only because of the technology. And then they used to say that sun never sets in British Empire. That was the power. So they could use technology. Britain is a small country geographically, but they could use the technology and resources of almost half of the world. And then slowly the power of technology shifted from Britain to US. So after 1947 and 1950, US concentrated. US had no role to play in the First World War. It was only in the Second World War that they played a role. And the Second World War, the role that they played was mainly because of their fight against Germany. Had Germany aligned with the US for some strange reason, I'm only saying ifs and buts, probably the war would have taken a different turn. And Germany, remember, was technologically the most advanced country. And then the Second World War finished their technology, and the technological revolution that Great Britain and Germany created was shifted to US. That is how US became the most technologically advanced country, therefore the most important country and the most strongest country also. Then they created an ecosystem of technologically powerful countries. One country which they created technologically very powerful was Japan. So from 1950 to say 1980, if you see, Japan turned out to be the most economically strong power and also technologically strong power. But because they did not have autonomy as far as world affairs were concerned, they were aligned with the security umbrella of the US, they did not become a global power. That is where the introduction of China comes. And then China did what exactly US did. So they created the Central Military Commission. US created what they call the DARPA. You must be aware of DARPA, so I won't go into the details of DARPA. But all the technological innovation that has happened in the world today, the US has introduced is DARPA. So DARPA is now working on what should be US technology from 50 years hence. From today, next 50 years, what should be the technological innovations that we should be working on? That is what DARPA is working now. And that is what Central Military Commission in China is working. That is why I say that technology is going to be the determining factor as far as the country's nuclear and economic strength is concerned. So that is where we should concentrate more on technology, and that is more important for us to develop from that point of view. Since we are also a older power and we have our own independence as far as foreign policy and international relationship is concerned, I think if we are able to combine this with our soft power plus technology plus economic strength, if these three things, if we are able to combine, we will be the masters of the world. Thank you.